Scorsese's backing us. I'm playing the lead. Like, it all felt like it was going to happen. And then it...
This is an actor who has continued to entertain, touch, and surprise us in a wide range of roles.
And it's a most unique honor to introduce...
Amazing.
Sebastian, what did your quarter-life crisis look like?
My partner got very sick. This girl had an illness, an autoimmune disease, and there was no cure for it. And we ended up going and doing a ceremonial medicine, they call it, but in the rainforest called ayahuasca. And it completely changed my life. I ended up on a boat in Cannes with Scorsese, and then Leo DiCaprio turns up.
Yeah.
This stuff is all really surreal.
Yeah.
But all of these things happened, and it felt like, oh my God, this is it. This is my career. I want to go where everybody knows my name.
Yeah. Oh, true. I actually do know. Sebastian.
Hello, Ryan.
I start all my podcasts with the same question because usually it sets a narrative for how the rest of the conversation is going to continue.
Okay.
That question is, are you happy?
Oh, fundamentally, I'm happy. Yes. I think deep down, I think I'm happy.
All right. What, in your opinion, is required to live a happy life?
Self-knowledge. I think a feeling of validation in your life. I think feeling part of it, not separate from it. Being a participant as opposed to just an observer.
Do you think happiness is what we should chase?
I don't think we chase happiness. I think that one needs to find it fundamentally.
Okay.
So I don't think it's something one finds out there. I think you learn to find it where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Usually I leave this question more towards the end, but I know in your case that it's particularly interesting.
Okay.
So obviously the podcast is called The Quarter-Life Crisis.
Yeah.
Would you say you have had a quarter-life crisis?
I definitely had a quarter-life crisis, I would say.
What did your quarter-life crisis look like?
So I guess my quarter-life crisis relates to finding meaning and finding happiness, you know. And so I would say at 25, I had just, I'd been acting for a few years, things had gone quite well. And it's a notoriously hard industry, acting, to get anywhere. And I think there was a moment of frustration and not realizing perhaps that this glamorized idea I had of the career I wanted was still somewhat out of reach. And I reframed. I think I just took a different track, and I took my career more into my own hands. And as opposed to just being an actor, I started writing and producing, which changed my path dramatically and has led somewhat to where I am now. Yeah. I mean, sorry to interrupt. It's a much longer answer than this. This is such a big question.
Of course.
So let's delve deeper.
But I guess that's what we're also here for.
Yeah.
What brought about that sort of reframing?
So many things. I think there's a philosopher / historian called Joseph Campbell, who wrote a book called A Hero of a Thousand Faces. It's quite a famous book. It's the theory of like the human story and what that is, and the fact that this philosopher Joseph Campbell he researched all the kind of stories from multiple different cultures, from all the cultures around the world, going from the west to the east to like little kind of small indigenous tribes. And he found that there's a fundamental story that is found in all of them. And it's a kind of a coming of age story. It's about being unhappy in your specific circumstances when you're young, traveling away from what you know to learn something else, and then eventually bringing it back, this new knowledge or wisdom, to where you came from, and improving like the place that you were, originated from. And this is the same stories. It's what George Lucas based Star Wars on, and the other film's coming out again now. Avatar was based on this, and I think that dissatisfaction and leaving what you thought you know and learning something else, and then realizing that home really is where the heart is. I think that is the story that I have found it within my own life. I had my father pass away 9 years ago, and that culminated quite nicely with me finding some success in my career and coming back and talking to my old man about it before he died, and kind of feeling pride from him. I think that was a big piece of the puzzle in terms of my archetypal kind of struggle with life. Yeah. So yeah, where did it span from? I think it comes from the same place it comes from any of us, wanting to do something and find meaning and have purpose and be validated. First of all, when I think one is at their perhaps quarter-life crisis, if you want to use the term, finding validation from others is important earlier. And I think later, as one gets older, it's becoming more about finding validation from myself, finding meaning in what I'm doing, and doing it for me and other people, then finding validity. But I'm really I'm doing it to fulfill myself, I guess.
Why do you think it's so common to look for validation from others, especially at this stage?
I think that's what we're trained to do when we're kids. We're looking for validation from our parents, aren't we? So, you get a pat on the back when you're young. I think it resonates with you, and then later you want it from the other people that you respect and appreciate. You want them to, think that you're doing stuff right. It's a measuring stick.
Yeah.
But I think in an industry which is as tricky as one like the entertainment industry, I think, and also so kind of there are so many shallow compliments that are given there. You really need to learn to read between the lines and find your validation from yourself, as opposed to others, because you can be you can be exciting to the world for a moment, and then not suddenly 6 months later. Someone else is the new thing. So you need to find it from yourself.
So at some point you go on this path of refinding yourself, I guess, right? What did you do to achieve that?
Well, it happened inadvertently in a way. I was in a relationship at a certain point where my partner got very sick. This girl had an illness, an autoimmune disease, and there was no cure for it. And we ended up going and doing, I don't know if your listeners will have heard of it. We ended up going off and doing something, a ceremonial medicine, they call it, but in the rainforest called ayahuasca. And I ended up doing that for a month every 3 days. So I did it 10 times. And I was there because we'd understood from some forums we'd read that it might help my partner with her illness, and in fact it did, which is interesting in of itself. But I also obviously did the medicine, and it completely changed my life. I undid some negative patterns from the past, learnt some fundamental truths about the meaning of things, and it completely reframed my subjective reality.
Yeah.
And
because what can you sort of describe what then happens? Like, obviously that's probably always going to be one of these things you have to do it to understand.
It's a very hard thing to describe, but I had many different kind of psychedelic experiences, as it were, where I certainly wasn't here in this reality, and it would feel that there were a deeper truth communicating through me or to me or coming from deeper within me, which was it cut out the kind of subjective lies of reality, the let's say self-defeating prophecies, the insecurities. There's so many bad patterns that we've built up, and it made me face some questions which, like, you couldn't really apply them to other people. They're deep, like, untruths that I personally have held, and I think everybody has their own. But there was a deep sense of liberation after I'd done the whole course, and I came back to the UK after doing it. We did it in Peru, and just my entire world and my entire career and everything just kind of blew up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to necessarily bore your listeners with my own personal understandings of them, but it cured of the experiences. But it certainly cured my feeling of separation from the world. It became less about me having to fight against the obstacles that were constantly thrown in my way, and more of a like a surrender to what is, but realizing that I am a part and parcel of everything. There is no war to be won. You know, it's
I find it interesting that you use the word surrender, and the reason why is one of the sort of sub questions of the whole quarter life crisis question is when you're trying to figure out what path to take and what to follow. If there's any advice there, and a few times now I've heard indeed the whole surrender yourself to what comes along. So would you also say if you're in this quarter life crisis situation and you're trying to indeed determine what am I going to do with the rest of my life, to surrender in that case?
I guess, because I think one can't really plan one can make a plan of what they think they're going to do with the rest of their lives, but when things don't go according to that plan, you have no choice but to surrender. And I think from most people's experience, you would say that you couldn't possibly have imagined what life was going to present to you.
Yeah. Fair.
So yeah, you just have to see what's coming and not resist too much when you have to deal with things that you weren't expecting to.
Yeah. Fair. Then, one of my research hypotheses with this podcast is that I'm trying to figure out is that passion equals purpose.
Passion equals purpose. Is that a question? Does passion equal purpose?
In this case, for you, yes. Yeah.
I guess.
Maybe the easier question at first is there something you are inherently passionate about?
Honestly, it's changed. It has changed since that quarter life crisis. And it's going to sound very, maybe quite cliche, but I think my purpose has changed from being like wanting, let's say, the approval or validation of others, like being an actor, wanting people to think that you're great at what you do. I think it's changed from that to genuinely wanting to be the best version of myself that I can be. And that's a moment-to-moment truth. Like, it's about how I am when I'm on my own, how I am when thoughts are going through my head that are, less than ideal.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that sabotage and, just presenting people with the best version of myself whenever I can.
Yeah.
Which is not the easiest thing, but it's an ongoing, it's a lifelong struggle.
Yeah.
And the better I get at it, the better my subjective experience of life is, but also the better the experience of everybody that, I involve myself with is.
Yeah.
And I think when one gets past just the striving to win in the system we're presented with, making enough money, paying your bills, when that stuff has passed and you're, comfortable enough to not have to worry about the bills, then I think you get to a point where you start thinking about this other stuff, this non-emergency stuff, and you realize that was actually perhaps way more important than striving for the money, essentially. And perhaps if we had dealt with that stuff earlier, then the money would have been more forthcoming in the first place.
That was that's sort of a sub-hypothesis again, that I think if we more actively deal with the quarter life crisis, that you are maybe able to avoid a midlife crisis.
I think that's probably the case, yeah. But it's just about when you have it. That
exactly.
Doesn't that just reframe the quarter life crisis to being the same as the midlife crisis? Just deal with it sooner.
For sure, yeah. But or at least I feel like a lot of the reason why people have midlife crises is because they realize at some point, well, I'm not actually happy in the situation I'm in.
Yeah.
Why not? And what I do think would be more beneficial if more people have a quarter life crisis, as strange as that sounds, is usually you don't have other people involved
This is
in
true.
your life.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time in a midlife crisis, you also drag down others with you.
Yeah.
Fair.
So what we're talking about is we're talking about pushing the age of self-awareness to be sooner in one's
I guess, yeah.
arc. Yeah, I think that's a very healthy thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
I also feel like that's something, or I can only speak on behalf of my generation, but something that has also come up more.
Yes.
This didn't used to be as much of a topic, I feel like.
no, I think that,
Or an option even,
I
maybe.
think you're right. I mean, the whole new, I hate the term, the woke culture. If we to take away the cynical mock making kind of like parodies of woke culture.
Yeah.
Just to the kind of what the ideally should be, which is about knowing thyself.
Yeah.
To try and sound a bit biblical. I think I think that's a very valid thing to do as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I think it's something that people should know more. Certainly, when I was at school, we didn't talk ever about meditation or self-awareness or taking responsibility for the thoughts in your mind.
Yeah.
That whole idea of victimhood and the way you feel is valid and it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, it's not really, is it?
Yeah.
I think in some circumstances, bad things are being done to people, obviously, but most people in our Western culture are, bitter and angry for reasons they've made up in their own heads.
Yeah. So obviously, I scrolled over your LinkedIn, and what was quite surprising to me was that you did a master or studied at university in engineering, if I'm not mistaken.
I did a master's in engineering at Imperial.
Why? First of all, why that master, and how did you end up starting in acting then? Because that's obviously something completely different.
I did an engineering degree because I didn't know what to do, and I was good at maths and physics, and my father was in physics as well, my late father, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I wanted to make money is all I thought when I was 17, and that degree was very well respected and appreciated in the banking sector to be an analyst or something like that. And that the plan was just not know what to do, wanting to make money was to go and work for one of the banks, the big banks like Merrill or Goldman or something. And so I did the degree, and I didn't really attend lectures very often, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And I last minute learnt my exams out of books and then managed to scrape through. And in the last year, I'd now spent, because my university was in London, and it was quite a cliquey university. A lot of foreigners who are incredibly good at maths and sciences would turn up, and I ended up just socialising, not so much at my university, but all over London. And I met a bunch of people who worked in media and film, and I started getting so much encouragement from people to have a go that I applied to drama schools in my last year of my degree, and I ended up getting a scholarship to go. And I applied for a 1-year course, and then I got a scholarship for 3 years. So I got to go back home and tell my physicist father that I was not gonna not gonna carry on in his footsteps. But he was amazingly supportive, especially when he found out I had a scholarship.
Yeah, understandable. Yeah.
So that was good. And then I did that for 3 years. So I did my master's in 4 years, and then I did drama school for 3 years. So I was a student for 7 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I had jobs to help sustain myself during those periods. But when I eventually left drama school, I was very lucky because I came straight out and I got a big advert for a Visit Scotland campaign, a tourism advert campaign. That this was back in the day when they paid really well.
Yeah.
And I essentially got 3 years' salary for a week in Scotland, where I went whitewater rafting, and
Damn.
I went and spent one day in a pub, and they filmed us drinking in an Edinburgh pub. We're running on the beach with kites, and what was the other one? Yeah, a walk in some highland area.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of money for it, and then I got a nice support role in a feature film. And that was great. and I just thought that, oh, it's made. Like things are
Came
happening.
surprisingly easy.
Yeah. And then I didn't work for 3 years, which was frustrating. I was going to auditions all the time, but just nothing landed. And strangely enough, I went from engineering to acting, and then I ended up becoming the. I'm now jumping ahead on my on the CV.
Yeah.
I ended up being the head of sales in the UK for Heston Sangar, which is a Swedish bed making company.
Okay. It's quite a transition.
Yeah, it was a very random scenario where I got the job as well. So a friend of mine who lived in Knightsbridge, no, not lived in Knightsbridge, worked in an office in Knightsbridge near Harrods, opposite Harvey Nicks actually. He rang me up one day and he knew that I had been at home, not working, running out of money, a bit depressed, playing World of Warcraft too long. And he rang me up and he was like, Seb, come out for lunch, put on a suit, make yourself look nice. All right, come out and I'll take you out for lunch. Stop being such a grumpy guts.
Yeah.
So I'm all right. And I put on my suit and I go to Knightsbridge. And I go to his building where he works, the office building, and I walk in there. I'm a bit early. And as I get to the door of this very grand office building, a very pretty Swedish girl opens the door and she goes, hello, are you here for the interview for Heston's Beds? And I look at her and she's beautiful. And I go, yes, I am. And she goes, okay, come with me. And as we walk in and we sit down, I somehow managed to pull out the bag. I asked her some very open-ended questions. And I said, so just quickly before we start the interview process, I mean, if you were to describe to me very briefly, I mean, honestly, day to day, what would my responsibilities be? And I'm like, who will I be answering to? And she quickly gave me an overview of the job. And then when I sat down with her, I answered the questions based on what she had literally told me. Yeah. And then it was all fun and it was all very flirty. But then I saw my friend coming down. Yeah. I've been chatting to this girl for about 10 minutes now. I saw my friend coming down in a glass elevator behind where I was being interviewed. And I said to her, look, this is really embarrassing. And I started to blush. And I said, I'm not really here for the interview. You just asked me so nicely at the door, and I thought, what the hey, this will be fun. I'm actually here for lunch with my friend, and he's coming down in the lift. And she turned around and saw him, and then she turned back around, and now she was blushing. Yeah. And I said, look, I'm sorry, I hope I haven't wasted your time, but I actually think I could really do this job. Remembering I needed a job. I hadn't earned anything for ages. I was getting desperate. I said, can I come back for an interview another day? And she said, okay, you can come tomorrow. And I went back and I met her tomorrow. And then they invited me back the next day and I did psychometric tests. And then a few days later, they rang me and asked me to go to Sweden to meet the owner of the company, which I did. And then I was invited back a week later, telling me I'd had the job. And for the first 2 months, they wanted to do education. So they started paying me, and I moved to a place called Herköping in Sweden, where the Heston's factory is. And I spent a day for a month on a different station in their factory where they hand make these beds for a month. And then they sent me to Sweden. They sent me to Florida for a month to do an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming seminar for a month with Richard Bandler, who is the inventor of NLP. They were paying amazing amounts of money to teach me neuro-linguistic programming.
From the man himself.
From the man who invented it, who taught Darren Brown and all the other big hypnotists, because they wanted me to learn incredible sales technique to close deals for them. And I swear this was one of the best educations I've ever had. It was really, really good. Just in terms of how to communicate with people and how to do sales pitches and to kind of enthuse people about ideas. And what I learned from it is that I naturally had an ability to it, but now it started to teach me that this awareness we were talking about earlier. It taught me when I wasn't doing it. So when I found myself under pressure and stress and my behavior slightly changed, let's say nerves and stuff come in, it taught me to be very much more aware of those physiological changes. Okay. So then I could fake the physiological changes a little bit I remember I have the kind of experience in acting as well, which all kind of leans into it, and that would naturally fall me back into being in a natural, open and honest and flowing state where it would make everything a lot better in communications and negotiations and that sort of stuff. Now, what was quite funny about this scenario was the people that were teaching, so Richard Bandler and his team of people that were teaching the NLP, I would have the classes with them during the day for this month, and in the evenings they would all go off to the Irish pub, and I would go and hang out with them at the Irish pub. So I'm sitting there with these trainers in NLP going, guys, this is crazy. I mean, I'm not really a guy that should be the head of sales. I should not be here. I'm an imposter. And they all thought it was hysterical, but they were like, well, you're obviously a great salesman because you've got here, and I'd have lots of banter with them. We got on really well. I'm still friends with a bunch of them. But then the next month, at the end of that month, I went back to the UK, and our responsibilities ongoing as the sales managers of particular countries was to go back and have monthly meetings with all the other salespeople. And on my first meeting, I only just started the job, and the job was to be in the UK and to help turn shops, new locations, into Heston Sangar kind of showrooms. And I hadn't done a huge amount. I'd only been working for this month. And at the end of the month, I went for the meeting. When I got there to hair shopping, all of Richard Bandler's kind of other trainers were all there in Sweden from Florida. And they had been hired to be consultants for Heston Sangar to streamline the company and to make sure that all the right staff are in all the right positions. And when I get there, I get this very knowing, wry smile from this guy called John, who I'd been drinking with in the Irish pub. Yeah. And he said, Seb, we'll interview you first. Yeah. I went into an interview with him, and before I could say anything, he said, well, we all know you don't really want to be here. Yeah. You want to be doing your acting. So I'm going to do you a favour, and I'm going to recommend that they pay you for the year. We just let you go. Okay. And that was it. So I was there for 3 months in total. They paid me for the entire year. They sent me back to the UK with a pat on the back and an amazing education in NLP, and said, off you go and do your acting. Uh-huh. Now, that education helped me know very much how to raise money.
Okay.
And so I then started going into producing and raising money for feature films and doing deals with producers and stuff to help kind of carve my career in the direction I wanted to go, rather than it being at the behest of agents and waiting for other people to create opportunities for me. Mm-hmm. So this random movement from
random
from engineering to acting to I essentially business, and then back into acting and now producing as well. Yeah, it gave me the skill set I needed to be a producer and understand the industry.
When that space in between these 3 years where you couldn't land an acting job, would you say that you had, at the end of this 3 years when you ended up taking that job, that you had given up?
No, I absolutely hadn't given up. But needs must, and there are immediate. This is why I brought it up earlier. There are immediate needs for finance, and you have to earn yourself a life. And you have to take a chance when you're in something like an industry like acting or music, that someone's actually going to pay for you to do that thing you love.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And most of the time, no one's going to pay you for that. Yeah. So you have to support yourself, and you have to have other ways of making money. Yeah. I mean, I've done chauffeuring as well. I do a lot of chauffeuring, in the past, and even when things get more complicated now, it's an easy way to go out and make money. Just instant cash in hand. Yeah. You have to pivot. You have to pivot.
Sure. Yeah. So then obviously you come out of this job, you do pivot, you have now the financial backup to get started in the acting. What were those what was different when you came out the other side? How come then all of a sudden it started working better?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? When one asks the question, when people have changes in their lives and things just start to flow, I sometimes wonder, is it if the person changed, or have the circumstances changed, or have the circumstances changed because the person has changed? Like, are you? If it's that kind of cosmic ordering, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
secret kind of mentality. But things just started to happen, and opportunities that felt, you meet people, they have a problem, and suddenly now you have an idea about how to solve their problem. And there were a lot, because I had spent 3 years contacting, producers and writers and directors, and showing them my show reel and talking to them about the projects that they wanted to make. That network was there, and the people that would essentially end up investing in these projects, I started to recognize them more and started having the right conversations with them. And I found that when I, if I do an audition and I get a job as an actor and I get paid for the acting, it's great. But if there is a production and I've read the script and they're shy, a couple of £100,000, then I can raise the money, take a percentage of the money I raise, negotiate a role that I like, if it works for the director, and then I double dip. I do,
Yeah.
I pay for the acting, I get paid for the producing. I'm helping other people manifest what they want to manifest,
Yeah.
and it just feels like a much better, a better situation to be in. And it means through the whole filmmaking process as well, I'm getting rewarded.
Yeah.
And it ended up after a few successes that people started coming to me as well.
Yeah.
And so you stop.
Funny how that flywheel then starts spinning much
Yeah.
faster once it's there. It's just
Exactly.
finding those first
Exactly.
opportunities.
And then the floodgates open for a while.
Would you say that you got lucky?
I would say that it would have. Yes, I got lucky, but sometimes you get to a position where you get lucky more and more often and more regularly.
Yeah. Where, what is it? Opportunity meets chance or some shit like that? Yeah. Okay. So obviously acting in particular is one of these like star things, right? Everybody sees, wow, it's crazy
Yeah.
and stuff. I try also though to talk about this sort of more the things people don't see, let me put it that way. So what about acting from your experience has been the things people don't talk about?
Okay. Well, I can't. I shouldn't. I won't presume to think that anything I'm about to say is things that people don't talk about, because many people have talked about acting and methodology and how it manifests in your life. But I think certainly in hindsight, being a bit older now and looking back, I think that acting is quite a cathartic experience. I think
Explain to me what cathartic means.
a catharsis is where one can exercise one's own, let's say, subtext. So you can exercise a demon, right?
Yeah.
By vicariously living through your character.
Yep.
So you study someone who's having some sort of crisis.
Yeah.
All you can do is, when you're learning about that character, is you can only empathize with those things that you've experienced in your own life. So when you attach these emotional understandings you have to this other character, by working through the narrative of this other character, it is a catharsis for your own suffering.
Yeah.
And I think that's the need to be famous, or the want or the desire to be famous, certainly for me has detached. I still from my desire to act. We had a conversation about this earlier, about I'm waiting for the next role that I want to play, as opposed to just wanting to act in anything that gets put in front of me. That's changed. I don't just want jobs. I want now a job that I will find fulfilling and that I find interesting.
Yeah.
And thankfully, because of the producing and the fact that I can make money that way, I now don't need to take. There's no drive to take any role that doesn't really grab hold of me. And my desire to be famous or be the central character is not. I don't have that anymore.
Is that solely from getting older?
I think from generally knowing myself better.
Because it's a very common thing that I think, even though most people will never say that, but I do think it's what attracts people to certain industries. Same goes for the music industry, at least. Like the reason, I think at least often the reason why people get into that is also because fame attracts in that sense.
Yeah. But I think that I think perhaps someone that just wants fame doesn't really know what they want.
Yeah.
Because what you really want is you want that acknowledgement.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, but there's an old American sitcom or comedy called Cheers. It's got Woody Harrelson in it, and it's quite an old show, but it had the theme tune to it that went, "I want to go where everybody knows my name."
Yeah. Oh, true. I actually do know. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that song always resonated with me a little bit, and I think that's you want to go somewhere where everybody like knows you and likes you, and I think that's to do with like that's what fame seems like to people when they're young.
Yeah.
But actually, sometimes you really don't want that. You just want to be able to go somewhere and be on your own, and and you want to observe rather than be the thing being observed.
Yeah.
It is interesting about like kind of jobs that are in the mass media is that you're choosing to be a job where you're the subject the whole time. Whereas most jobs is that you're not. Most jobs is like you're looking at objectively as something else as the subject.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the need not to be the subject, not to be the main event, I think that disappears over time when you start to see life differently.
Right. I think I read at some point that acting, or a reason a lot of people get into acting is because it gives them the ability to constantly be someone else.
Yeah, or to constantly be someone when they don't know who they want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's when you don't know who you are, it helps you explore that.
Yeah.
And I think, I suppose like the next extension of that is if you do a lot of acting and you play a lot of different roles, you realise that you are a piece of all of these different characters.
Right.
And I think that's quite expansive, that realisation.
Yeah.
And also, and this is probably the main one, is when you're studying these narratives, these stories of these characters, one begins to really recognise what drama is, and you realise that the motivation of all these characters is born out of a story that they're holding tight to. So in order to play a character correctly, then you must hold on and act in accordance with the story, the narrative that character is holding on to.
Yeah.
And that gives a certain amount of liberation because you suddenly realise, well, what the hell is my story? What am I reacting to in my real life? And that, it begs the question, it's who...
Are you able to, by now, say what your story is?
I know what the slightly sabotaging things would be. But I think, I don't think I think I'm trying to disentangle my story as we go forward. Mine's not so toxic, to be fair. I mean, I've come from a good background, and I've had nice parents that were nice to me, and I had a good education. I've never gone hungry, so I'm in a very, very privileged position. But obviously, there are things that have created suffering for me. But I don't think there's anything so toxic that it's like really carving my life up in a negative way.
Yeah.
But that is the studying of acting, is to understand the narratives of these other people and why they behave in these obtuse ways.
Yeah.
They are obtuse. That's why it's called drama.
Yeah.
And this is why I think that a lot of people say you shouldn't. Like, people watch a lot of TV.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are very dramatic these days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they react to things in a very strange way. And I think that there's a correlation between having TV on in the background, and if you're constantly hearing drama, you're hearing heightened behaviours.
Yeah.
So if you've got a soap opera on in the background, the whole point is that it's drama.
Yeah.
And that's not a normal way to behave.
No.
Being dramatic is not healthy. And yet all our role models, everything we see on TV, are constantly acting dramatically.
I mean, I think that's probably even proven, right? Like that, I don't think that's even a sort of unknown. Right. That's because that's also at least the reason why I stopped watching the news, because everything is constantly so negative.
Yeah,
and
not,
there
not
is
necessarily
a lot,
the truth either.
And that as well. Yeah. And I 100% imagine that same goes for TV if you're constantly watching that. Kira and I recently watched the Jeffrey Dahmer.
Okay, I haven't seen it
um,
yet.
It's mad. But I read an interview about the actor afterwards where he explained that he had to go into therapy as a result of playing this character. So I guess I'm curious: have there been any of the characters you've played that have more significantly influenced either your understanding of yourself or your life in general?
So I played a veteran, a British soldier who got blown up in Afghanistan, and became a paraplegic. And I actually wrote this script with a business partner of mine called Stuart Brennan. And so I spent a lot of time with injured veterans who were going through rehab. I spent a lot of time with a guy who was a paraplegic from a helicopter crash. And because we had 3 false starts on the film, where I thought we were about to start shooting, and then it got pushed back. And this happened 3 times until we eventually did it. I spent so long in that wheelchair because I would intensively do it for like a month or 6 weeks before I start shooting. So I ended up doing this 3 times. So I spent a good 4 or 5 months in a wheelchair. And I really did it. You know, I would go into town in a wheelchair, and I would try and hail a cab. I had one. This was quite funny. When I went on one of my little outings to practice in the wheelchair, I hailed a cab, and black cabs in London, they have little ramps that they can pop out, and you can get a wheelchair up on it. And this bless his heart, proper London cabbie. He pulls over to the side of the road. He sees me flagging. He goes, "Don't worry, mate." He says, "My ramp is not working." He says, "Well, don't worry. I'll get you in the car. No problem."
Yeah.
And he jumps out of his cab before I can say, "Don't worry, it's okay. I can actually walk."
Yeah.
But he jumps out of his cab, and part of the point was, you know, I was trying to negotiate London when I did these days out.
Yeah.
Not using my legs. It was
Yeah.
about sticking in the wheelchair and seeing what it was like. But he jumped out of his car, he came straight over, and he literally picked me up, right? He picked up, and I'm not light. I've got to be 80, 82 kilos,
Yeah.
right? This guy picked me up, and he carried me into the back of his cab. And now at this point, I'm like, oh, I can't tell him.
I can't. Yeah.
It'll break his heart.
Or when you get out of the cab, just like, all right, see you later, mate.
So he picked me up, he put me in the car, he folded up the chair, put it in with him, he took me into central London, and I let him pick me up and put me back in the chair.
Wow.
Quite a funny scenario. But there was another thing I had to learn to do before shooting. We had written in the script, because I'd seen someone do it on YouTube. I had seen somebody go upstairs backwards in their wheelchair. And they did it by reaching behind. So let's just say you bring your right shoulder up backwards to the handrail, and then you hold on behind you to the handrail, and then you put your hand over your body onto the wheel nearest the ledge. And then you'd see people pulling themselves up one step at a time by turning the wheel across their body, pulling on the handrail. And I saw people doing this online, and I was like, oh, that's cool. That's never been done in a movie before, so we wrote it in the script. And then I tried to do it. And oh my God, it was hard. But thankfully, because I had 9 months, you know, I was just training and getting stronger and stronger.
All arms,
and one day, when I got to the point where I could almost pull myself out, and it was good because I needed to build my upper body and let my legs go skinny for the role as well. But one day when I was heaving, trying to get up the steps, I couldn't do it. And I just couldn't do it. And I rang up my partner, Stuart, and I was like, Stuart, we're going to have to rewrite the script because I can't do this. We're going to have to find another way.
Yeah.
Right? And he was like, no, you can't. You've got to do it. You've got to do it. And literally, the week before I had to shoot, I worked out how to do it. And it wasn't strength at all. It was a little thing where you lean forward, you lean back, and it's just this little motion.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I just worked out how to do it before we shoot.
Yeah.
And in the film, I fall on one step because I've only just learned how to do it.
Yeah.
But grab myself and pull myself back up. That was ended up being the take they used in the film because it looked so natural. Because I was actually kind of failing while I was doing it.
Yeah.
But that was quite cool. So, what observations did I learn? That was your question, really. What did I learn about myself?
If it even not just learn about yourself, but also how that influenced, I guess, your
how it influenced my
life or perception of reality. Whatever.
Okay, well, I could tell you about that. So this film, I was very fortunate. We somehow through one might call it luck, but there was many, multiple lucky things that happened to get here.
Yeah.
This script that we wrote somehow found its way into the hands of Martin Scorsese, who then said he liked the script and what did we want to do with it. And his script supervisor on numerous films, a woman called Martha Pinson, she ended up directing the film for us, and Martin Scorsese produced it with us. And I found myself in Martin Scorsese's house in New York with the animatronic doll from Hugo behind me on the sofa and his dog around my ankles who I was petting. I ended up on a boat in Cannes with Scorsese.
Yeah.
And then Leo DiCaprio turns up.
Yeah.
This stuff is all really surreal.
Yeah.
But all of these things happened, and it felt like, oh my God, this is it. This is my career. I've just written a script about awards material about an injured veteran, and Scorsese's backing us. I'm playing the lead. Like, it all felt like it was going to happen. And then it came out in festivals and did very, very well in festivals. And I ended up going off to Napa and winning Best Actor and Best Film. And it was all crazy and amazing. And then came back to the UK and we had a premiere outside the British Museum with the armed forces. The army came and lined up the red carpet and were shooting their guns into the air and doing this whole procession before the screening of the film. Like, it was unheard of. It was amazing for this little British independent film with Scorsese behind it and the army behind it, and it was mad. And then the film didn't really come out. Like, you can't now get it on Netflix. You can't get it on Amazon, even though it did well at festivals. And we're in a bit of and I can't talk about it too much, but we're in a strange holding situation with some politics and other stuff, which means the film never came out. Now, when I walked down the red carpet, and this was my big break, it's going to happen. I walked down the red carpet with the soldiers on either side, all right, and it was my film. I was the lead in it. And as I walked down that carpet, and I had my mum there, and it was amazing. Like, she was so proud of me. She was more amazed than I was. As I walked down the carpet, I thought, oh, this doesn't really feel any different at all. It doesn't. This is what it's all been built up for. This is the thing that everybody else thinks is all glamorous and amazing. And it was just the same as any other day.
Anticlimax, right?
It was the same as everyone else was super excited, but for me, it was the same as every other day. And I really had that total thought going through my head as I was walking down the red carpet with this beautiful girl on my arm. I was like, doesn't feel any different.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge shift of perspective.
Right.
It's the thing that you thought you wanted, you didn't really want, you know, or didn't really need, you know.
And can you name what you thought you would have wanted then?
I guess that was the validation thing we're talking about, but I just wanted the validation from myself, really. Yeah. You know, I mean, the quiet conversations I'd had with veterans after they saw the movie were much more valuable to me. Yeah. Those moments, it's the personal stories that about the film made the film more valuable to me than my own experience. Really later. Yeah. There's a really funny one. So there was a soldier, and it just shows you the courage of some people. There's a Scottish soldier that I met who was in rehab, who had lost one leg up to the knee, another leg completely, and half of one of his hands. And I was sitting there talking to him, and it's a Scottish guy. And he went, you know what's really, really fucked up, Seb? And I was like, no, what's that? He said, I was in Afghanistan. I'm going Irish now. But
get the idea.
Yeah, you get the idea. He said, when I was in Afghanistan, we were fighting for, like, protecting poppy fields on one side of the road, right? And then we were burning down ones on the other side of the road because of some agreement, or you know, someone had paid their dues, someone else hadn't. He said, and then I stand on an IED and I get blown up, and they whip me back to the UK and they put me on all the opiates made from these poppies, right? And then he goes, I said, that's not fucked up enough. He says, and then on Remembrance Sunday, for some strange reason, I have to wear a poppy on my jacket, right? And the guy said it with this wry smile of how ridiculous is the world. And for him to have that, you know, to have that gallows humor, you know,
even then,
even then, and it really, I mean, to think that any struggle or emotional content that I have going on in my acting or in my own personal dark night of the soul is of any importance whatsoever when you have stories like that being told to you is, you know, it
reminds me of this very cliche saying that instead of looking up all the time, try looking down and see, you know.
Ah, yes,
see how good you actually have it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah. And yeah, from up here on the 22nd floor, it doesn't feel so bad.
No, I can imagine. Yeah. Wild.
So there was that film. That was nice. That was a good experience. I had
But that wasn't even that long ago, right?
that was maybe 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
I think there is. I think that when I was younger and acting, there was an overindulgence in the idea of method acting and being the character and living it the whole time. But as one, I would say. I think as I got older, I have stopped being so indulgent in that sense and just stuck to the rules of acting in a sense, which is as if you understand the narrative or the internal narrative of that person, and you respond in accordance with that subtext, then it's going to be a good performance. You don't need to. After a certain amount of indulgence in the character, you can let that go. You don't have to kill yourself to play a suicide.
Yeah.
A suicide victim.
I hope not. Of course. It would be dedication to the act.
But that also takes a lot of pressure off, I think.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, no, it's a self-reflective like life being an actor. I think if you do it, if you're doing your job properly, I think self-awareness must come.
I think I'm already at my last question. What does the future hold for Sebastian?
Right. It's a good one. So, I hope more happiness. Loving relationships. Work that will inspire others to have hope. I want to make films that give people hope. And I want, and in terms of materialistic kind of progress, my company, Paradox House, I would like for our development team, because we have a great development team, I would like for that to grow and to be outputting more and more of the same kind of stories. If I could build an empire of benevolent, hopeful storytellers, then that would be amazing. Because I think that is a very, I think that's a useful thing that I can provide to the world.
Fulfilling.
Happy, fulfilling stories that give people hope. That's what I want the world to be injected with.
Yeah. Don't doubt that you're gonna make that happen. Thank you so much for your time and your story. It's been a fascinatingly different story.
Thank you for being interested.
Yeah, so thanks very much.